Welcome to a special edition of the Global Gaming Business Podcast, the industry's first and longest running podcast, now in our 16th year. I'm Roger Gross, the publisher of GGB, and in this special edition we sit down with Marek Suchar, the CEO of Odin.gg, on how his company is at the cutting edge of interest in wagering on esports. This week's program is brought to you by Konami Gaming. Later in the show, we'll talk about two Konami slot series ranked top-grossing premium lease games by Eilers and Krychek. Welcome to the Global Gaming Business Podcast. Our guest today is Marek Suchar. Marek is from the Czech Republic. Brought an interesting topic to our podcast today, and it's on esports and how the casinos can capitalize. And Marek, I've been going to esports conferences now for almost 10 years. I think the first one I went to was in 2012 or something like that. I also went to an esports tournament at the Cosmopolitan early on, and it was very interesting, but there were a lot of young children running around. So I'm not sure how casinos can capitalize on this phenomenon, and I don't think they really have so far. Why haven't they really been able to figure out how to capitalize on the demographics of esports?
Yeah, absolutely. Roger, many thanks for having me. The question is extremely valid. When it comes to esports in general, what we need to realize is that esports is just the pinnacle of gaming as such. So probably what you've seen, and mainly what it was related to, was gaming in general. And of course, gaming goes across all the ages. And because Fortnite has become really a prominent title in the US, right. And there were a lot of young children actually playing it, but this is not necessarily esports. So right. Fortnite brought a lot of buzz around esports to the mainstream, but at the same time Fortnite is to some extent esports, but it doesn't have that many tournaments being played. Right. So it is more of a gaming, of a cultural thing, and at the same time it is extremely popular for streamers. But at the same time, if we are speaking about esports as such, esports, the core esports, we are speaking about titles like Counter-Strike, Dota, League of Legends, right. And then the audience is a bit older, many times above 18 years old, many times already the people actually grew with the titles because they've been around for more than 10 years already. And it became pretty much 10 years, 15 years ago when those people played the game, they started to watch it through Twitch and other platforms, and eventually they start to betting on it. Coming back to your original question, when it comes to casinos and how they can monetize this trend, it is definitely, esports is mainly online thing. So if you think about it, the games are being played online, they are being watched online, and many of the tournaments are being played online. At the same time, it has a dimension of actually being even LAN events, offline events, where the best teams actually gather, the people can come there. Of course, there was a limitation because of COVID, right. And many of those tournaments didn't happen. But at the same time, you can consider esports as a social the top esports events as a social gathering of the viewers. Sure. And of course, there can be a betting as a part of it. And with that being said, casinos can actually position themselves in an angle that, okay, we can be those hubs for those entertainment. Because if you think about Vegas, when we are right now sitting, sure. It's a place about entertainment, is it transferred itself to a place of entertainment, not necessarily only gambling. Right. So you can think about it, the hub where these esports tournaments will be played, where they will be watched, and where they will be transmitted globally, right. And at the same time you'll be able to bet on them. So this way casinos can actually bring the traffic from the younger generation, because many times they are struggling to actually capture the attention of the younger generations. If you cross, the halls downstairs through the casinos, usually we are speaking about 50 plus, mainly 50 plus age group. And of course, you want to attract the younger generation, for which slots are many times not that engaging, because all the time and many times every phone application that you have in your pocket can be pretty much more engaging than just pushing the buttons on the slots. So of course you want to attract that generation. And one thing is to organize those top events, organize even seasonal events, organize regular events with the players, either globally, specifically in the US, and make that a social gathering for the others to come, view, or potentially compete.
Okay. So, you mentioned in Las Vegas, there's a couple of models they've used here in Las Vegas. The Luxor has opened the lounge there. I'm blanking on the name of it right now, but it was, a beautiful lounge, well done, like a big stage and like the games all over the place, but it didn't seem to be utilized that much. And I'm not sure, what the reason is. I mean, they hold special events in there. The Downtown Grand has their own little esports lounge, much smaller variety. And in fact, they moved that around a couple of times. Seth Shore told me one time that the slot players were disturbing the esports players, so they had to move it. But what do you think? How they've used that in this town, and do you think there's any success to be made, by introducing these type of lounges into a casino?
Yeah, I'll be speaking just from my perspective because I do not have the exact experience and expertise of the casinos around here. But I guess COVID definitely has an impact.
Right, sure.
Then there is a line between, as we've touched, the younger generation of players and the players that are actually allowed to the premises, so that 18, 21 years old threshold. So that can also have the impact. But at the same time, as I mentioned originally, the esports is mainly online.
Right.
It is done online.
Okay.
It actually evolved online for the last 10 years.
Sure.
So you can capitalize on that one, and that's why with our partners, with our clients, when it comes to online betting, in-game betting, this already works. There is a lot of volume betting bet there, and also there's a huge traction of growth that we are seeing.
Sure.
When it comes to casinos, I guess that definitely a couple of venues tried, but at the same time, it is about more consistent and long-term strategy that the people are aware. Okay, this kind of event is actually happening regularly there.
Right.
I can come, I can visit. These are the teams competing there. It is not about just having the tournaments, of course, here and there.
Right.
And of course, to build this long-term strategy around it, it was hardly impacted by COVID.
Okay. So we've also seen a phenomenon in the U.S. anyway. I'm not sure if this is true in other countries, but some of the major sports teams have set up their own esports teams, I guess they're in leagues. I'm not really sure. Do you think that's a strategy that could really work for the casinos? Maybe they have their own esports teams?
Very good question. For sports teams, it is about what we've touched already. When you look at the age distribution of their fans, it's tending to be older.
Right.
So they are trying to capture on the younger audience. So when it comes to either League of Legends by Schalke, even though there have been some things around it, if you think about PSG that partnered with LGD, they partnered actually also with other partners in Southeast Asia. So it's about capturing the younger audience for all of them. With that being said, if you think about the casinos, it might be tricky because casinos at the same time, of course, the strategy will be to monetize esports, which is through betting. And you not necessarily want to be as a book tied with a certain team as a sponsor when it comes to a couple of activities.
That's true, right.
But at the same time, it can bring because if you think about online books, Betway, Rivalry, Picklebet, all of them are pretty much sponsoring some teams to gain the visibility, to gain the traction.
Right.
I guess for casinos, this is something to capture eventually, but not necessarily this is the right moment to start for them.
Sure.
Because they should be much more involved in the local presence.
Right.
While all these books, they are operating globally. So if you think about them, they can capture the audience in multiple jurisdictions. When it comes to casinos, many times this will be focused on local. So sponsoring local team, it might make a lot of sense. But at the same time, for casinos, it would be more about creating the long-term content than necessarily sponsoring the teams.
Okay, great. So tell us about your company, Odin. How can you help casinos monetize esports?
Yeah, absolutely, we can do that. Odin is B2B esports odds feed and risk management provider. We have our own iframe. We are all about engagement.
Okay.
So pretty much, if it comes to esports, usually 80 to 90% of the volume happens in live. So while the game is being played.
Right.
And of course, it has its implication, it has its challenges. With that being said, to casinos, how we can help is that we can provide the odds for their own tournaments that they are creating. So that way, we can process all the data, we can calculate the odds, we can provide the risk management to it. So end-to-end solution for esports, how they can monetize, how they can engage the bettors in the premises.
Okay.
At the same time, the events that are happening globally are in CSGO, Dota, League of Legends, certain tournaments, certain leagues. And of course, we can provide them, again, end-to-end solution for esports, which they can plug in. And they bettors can just come and enjoy the esports offering and stay engaged across the entire game, because they can bet across the entire game on multiple events happening there. So this way, of course, eventually monetize the bettors and the viewership that they are getting as the book.
Okay. So I was following the Unicorn company for a long time. I interviewed these guys who founded it several times, and recently it was sold to Entain, I believe.
Yeah, that's correct.
They got a pretty nice piece of change for that. And how is that anything like your company, or is that just a straight on betting company?
Unicorn as such is B2C facing, so
Right.
their bookmakers are themselves, similar to Entain,
Right.
even though they have own sort of platform. For us, Unicorn can be an example of our own client, where they take care of pretty much everything when it comes to marketing, building the brand,
Right.
CRM, getting the regulated status in the different states. But at the same time, they do not know how to calculate the odds feed. So they do not know how to set up the lines properly within esports. So we might be their partner to actually help them to do so.
Okay.
We are already doing that for Picklebet in Australia. We are already doing that for Etabet in Spain.
Okay.
For EEG, which applied for the New Jersey license recently. So these are, and we have multiple distribution partners and platforms as well as bookmakers. So we are the ones providing that odds feed, so the bettors can stay engaged, but at the same time they can monetize, because we are creating more than 7% margin for them on those bets.
Okay.
Since September, 2 high-performing Konami slot series have ranked in Iro's and Krychek's list of top-performing parent games / premium leased. Both All Aboard and Ocean Spin have demonstrated consistently strong results, and both are available now on Dimension 49J, awarded first place for Best Slot Product in this year's GGB Gaming and Technology Awards. Learn more by visiting KonamiGaming.com/premiums.
Okay. So let's talk about the regulatory side of this. We've had New Jersey and Nevada approve betting on certain specific tournaments for esports, but you're obviously envisioning betting on a whole wide selection of esports contests. How are you going to get across to the regulators that we know that we have a system with integrity and transparency?
Yeah, absolutely. Extremely right question, specifically for US, even though the other jurisdictions as well. Odin is member of ESIC, Esports Integrity Coalition, so we are discussing then a variety of topics. We are discussing with them how to actually move the ball forward regarding the integrity, monitoring of the integrity, and of course reporting certain situations that are happening in esports. With that being said, when it comes to the US, esports betting is happening. Whether somebody likes it or not, it is happening. Our key vision for the upcoming 1 to 2 years is to actually make the betting safe, because the betting is happening offshore, even though it should be happening onshore. So it can be taxable, it can be, protect the youngers actually from betting. We might be speaking about safer gaming and other things to actually done. So esports as such is not that much different from regular sports.
Right.
So if the sports are allowed, and again, many jurisdictions actually approve that, for esports, they should be allowed as well. It is just the nature of the esports and a couple of dogmas that are around it,
Right.
While regulators are more struggling or more reluctant to actually approve it. When we might speak about underage, right? This is a usual topic if you go to mainstream and you try to find something about esports betting. Usually there are topics like underage, integrity, and other things.
Right.
When it comes to underage, we did the the audit ourselves, and out of the top 100 esports teams, only one was considered underage, depending on the Swedish and Spanish regulation, and I guess it will be similar to the US. So when it comes to the players as such, they are already not underage.
Yes.
When it comes to players, this is again only about the sportsbook, because we are providing the lines. Esports is about betting, but at the same time, if you think about DraftKings, FanDuel, would they allow somebody underage to bet on sports? No, they wouldn't, because they have a certain monitoring system in place. This is not necessarily the case with the offshore books, right?
Sure,
They can allow this. So eventually, if we are speaking about underage betting of underage on esports, the topic is pretty much the same as for sports.
Right.
So this is going only to the legislation and to the bookmakers to actually do their job properly, and everybody who has the license do it properly.
Sure.
So this is not the topic for esports as such, because it's the same as for sports.
Right. Yeah, I can see. Definitely, there's a concern with underage people betting on it, but I'm probably less of a concern about underage people who are actually playing on the teams, because you can bet on the Olympics now, and what a 14-year-old won the ice skating session at the recent Olympics, and that was bettable. So there's certainly some arguments to be made in that direction. For
Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah. So. My question again, one of my other questions on esports always has been, how can you tell if somebody is kind of throwing a match? I mean, how can you tell if the guy didn't make the right move on purpose? It just seems like you've got to have a ton of data to be able to prove that they didn't do that.
Yeah, match fixing in esports, I would say, is similar to match fixing in sports. It can happen for sure, but at the same time, there are definitely things how to analyze it. There are the things how to analyze the game that something was actually happening. When it comes to match fixing, I guess a lot of publishers that are out there, mainly regarding the top titles, we are speaking about Valve, we are speaking about Riot, they are taking the steps in that direction. Valve mainly through the tournament organizers. At the same time, if you think about analyzing the trend, it is good for publishers to actually work with bookmakers, platforms, integrity councils like ESIC, also similar to us, because many times, you said it yourself, like if you miss a certain shot, but you should have made it, it is hard, it can be done, but it is hard to analyze it within the game.
Sure.
But at the same time, if you see a certain betting activity heading in the direction where new accounts are created, there are next bets and all this kind of traction, then you know something fishy is happening, and then you should check it.
Right.
This is what was happening actually on our end with one of our partners with C recently. It was 1-2 weeks ago, an activity where in a certain title, I wouldn't go much into the details, but it was a game happening, and the underdog was actually losing. They were not going to make it to the next phase of the tournament, and they bet heavily on number of kills over under. And in that particular game, it's not like soccer NFL that the game ends after a certain time. It is about objective. And they tapped out with GG saying like, we are ending the game, we pretty much surrender. When it was quite obvious that the game is going the other direction, and at the same time, suddenly when the odds were like even when it comes to number of kills.
Right.
And because of the activity that we've seen, we saw, okay, this was suspicious, but if we would be like a publisher, it will be like standard situation for you, odds or even, it doesn't matter. But we've seen that activity, we've seen that actually happened, and we were able to analyze what was behind it.
Okay, great. So another thing you mentioned, which is again unique to esports and not necessarily involved with other kind of sporting activities, is the publishers. I mean, they control the games that they invent, and so they're another layer that you have to add to your consideration of what you're going to use. I mean, how does that fit into what Odin does?
Yeah, absolutely. If you think about publishers, exactly as you said, gods in their own regard, because they own the game. The next day, if they decide like we are going to completely revert the game, they can do that. Nobody can limit that from that. But at the same time, they do not want to ruin what they've been building for decades, more than a decade, right? Because eventually esports is the pinnacle of the activity. It is the most competitive part of the ecosystem they have created. So they want the players, the viewers to enjoy the entire ecosystem. So at the same time, they are the ones that are more likely to be involved in a certain, let's say, integrity concerns. They are the ones that are more like laissez-faire. Okay, we are providing you the game, but the ecosystem takes care of that.
Right.
So with that being said, we had a couple of these discussions where some of them are extremely inclined to make the dent in a way that they will participate on the integrity part. At the same time, they do not want to be too much involved because at the same time they are more developers than actually betting companies. I would say all of them realize that betting is happening no matter what they are doing about it, because it's a public, on Twitch you can find a public stream.
Right.
So this is not something you can withhold, you can control, you can limit. You just need to go play along with it. But at the same time, you do not want your leagues to be impacted by it in a negative way. That makes fixing is happening a lot, so you want to keep some eye on that integrity part.
Yeah.
So in general, I would say there are different publishers having a different approach to the integrity as such. But at the same time, what we've seen after PASPA appeal was that a lot of them actually have the ambitions to become next NFLs, next NBAs, next NHLs. And they definitely, because of the player base, that aspiration is valid.
Okay, great. So to wrap it up, what is your message to the casino operators? I'm hearing, first of all, you're saying esports is an online activity, but secondly, you need a regular schedule of events to draw people into your casinos. Is that a good encapsulation of what you're going to tell them?
Absolutely. I would say we might be speaking in two directions, right? One is online sportsbook, and many times they are tied to the casinos operators as well, because using the license. So one thing is that if I probably start with online operators, esports is here. It is already huge in the US. It's just not happening in the properly regulated environment. And again, it's our ambitions to help to change that. And many of the books, once they decide to be first movers, they can gain a significant market advantage and actually address younger audience, much more wealthy audience, because there are stats that actually prove that the average income of the esports fan is much higher than actually the regular fan. So they can address the market and gain an advantage. And moving back to casinos, of course, many casinos, they have the books as well. So there can be the esports fans that will come, they will chill, they will bet on esports in their premises, both offline and online. And at the same time, they can start monetize on the traffic that eventually the bettors will come to the casinos to play, to watch, and eventually to bet.
Okay, great. So how can casino operators get in touch with you or see your website if they're interested in applying for your services?
Yeah, happy to chat, happy to speak. We are available at Odin GG with double D. We are speaking to a lot of partners right now, so definitely happy to stay in touch, get in touch and stay in touch and discuss the opportunities within esports for both online books and casinos.
Great. Well, Marek, good luck. It's a very interesting field, and I think you've got something interesting going on here, and I think that people are going to be really interested in seeing it. So thanks for joining us, and thanks for joining us on the GGB Podcast.
Hope you enjoyed this week's podcast, with thanks again to Konami Gaming. Visit KonamiGaming.com/premiums for more on this year's best slot product, Dimension 49J. To learn more about esports and its role in gaming, visit GGBmagazine.com. To get all the news of the gaming industry delivered to your desktop every Monday morning, visit GGB News and sign up with the coupon code GGB180 for a free subscription. Don't miss a single episode of the podcast. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify today. So we'll see you next time on the GGB Podcast.